Sling and Things.
Sup, everyone, and welcome to another edition of Sling and Things, the show that fulfills your deepest desire in the world. If your deepest desire is a YouTube show where a dude reviews a movie while playing a video game, and if that's the case, then hey, you're in luck, because today I'm reviewing a dandy of a film. It's kind of a film. It's like half film, half long episode of a show. It's the 2019 follow-up movie to one of the most critically acclaimed shows in television history, El Camino, a Breaking Bad movie. And it was directed by Vince Gilligan, who's the same dude who created Breaking Bad. I am a giant Breaking Bad fan. It's one of the greatest shows I've ever seen. But when it was announced that there was going to be this epilogue to the show, I had conflicting opinions about it. On the one hand, I was excited to see more from the story and to see these characters again and to find out how things turned out for Jesse Pinkman, who was last seen driving away in an El Camino at the end of Breaking Bad. And when the show ended, all we knew was that he was driving away from this place where he'd been held captive all this time. On the other hand, Breaking Bad had a very satisfying, very conclusive ending that didn't really need a follow-up movie. You didn't know what happened to Jesse, but that was okay. It was something you could leave to your imagination. It wasn't a loose thread. In other words, it wasn't necessary for El Camino to be made. And Vince Gilligan, to his credit, verbally acknowledged in interviews that he knew this movie didn't need to exist. And I think it's important that he recognized that, because if he didn't, if he went into this with the mindset that this was going to be like an extra episode of Breaking Bad, then it would have flopped. It would have been derivative. And it wouldn't have lived up to the standard that Breaking Bad set, which is incredibly high. This follow-up movie, thankfully, knows what it's supposed to be, and it is a really good complement to the ending of Breaking Bad, which is to say that it doesn't retcon anything, it doesn't wander off to explain a plot hole, and it doesn't add so much new information that it forces you to see this in order to understand what went on in Breaking Bad. El Camino is just a bonus. And it's a good bonus. It's a fun bonus to sit through. El Camino justifies its existence because even though Walter White was the clear alpha of the show, Jesse, played by Aaron Paul, was the clear 1B. He was there throughout Walter White's entire journey. He was the most important character outside of Walter White. And there was more to be explored with him. We didn't know the full extent of what it was like for him to be held prisoner all that time, and what kind of mental toll that inflicted on him. And what the film does is, it flips back and forth from the present time, in which Jesse is trying to elude the cops and escape New Mexico, to the past, in which we learn more about what it was like when he was dealing with these crazy white supremacist people. Half the movie is told via flashback, in which we see major characters from Breaking Bad reprise their roles in conversations with Jesse that we, the audience, had never seen before. For me, the flashbacks totally worked, for two reasons. One, it gives more context for why the hell Jesse needs to get out of New Mexico and why he specifically wants to go as far away as possible. The second reason is that it allows Jesse to not have to talk much in the present time, which is good because in the present time, his character had changed quite a bit. He's not as talkative and energetic as he was early on in Breaking Bad. He's been traumatized. So there is no scene in this movie where Jesse, spills his guts and, monologues about what it is that he's feeling and what it is that's driving him and what he thinks the future holds for him. And that's because it wasn't necessary. Those are things that we ourselves can pick up from the flashbacks. The flashbacks actually add more to his character, which is impressive because they easily could have slipped into being fan service. It very easily could have been this thing where you're seeing Jesse talking to these old characters the fans hadn't seen in years, and their conversations don't actually mean anything. They only exist to delight the fanboys and fangirls who just wanted to see these characters interact again. The flashbacks in El Camino work because they're very natural. They feel like the type of average, mostly mundane conversations that Jesse really would have had with these people, and that we didn't know about them until now because they weren't relevant to what was going on in Breaking Bad. The whole illusion that these flashbacks really happened would have been busted if the old characters were all saying wildly revelatory things that permanently altered the canon of this universe. That would have made the flashbacks feel fake and forced. But instead, the flashbacks are quiet and deliberate. They help tell a story that Jesse Pinkman didn't need to explicitly tell himself, which is to this movie's benefit, because it allows him to be like a man with no name in a Western movie. One thing that was critical for El Camino to do is that it retains the look and feel of Breaking Bad, which had a very distinct sense of style to it. There are lots of unique, unorthodox shots that you'll see throughout the film, and the music is very atmospheric and earthy. What I loved about Breaking Bad, and what El Camino does too, is that it has some of the best world building that I've ever seen. It draws you in and gets you to believe that there really is this secret society of criminals out there who all work under the cover of darkness and all operate in this very organized way by this very specific code in order to make a living. When you see Jesse in his car by himself in this movie, you really do buy that he is in like a different world than ordinary people, that he is part of the seedy underbelly of society, and that the only people who are in his sphere are the same people he now finds himself trying to escape from. El Camino comes off as a very faithful addition to this franchise, one that does a fantastic job of replicating its predecessor. The only point in the movie where it's clear that this was made 6 years after Breaking Bad ended, and not like right after, is when you see the character of Todd. In Breaking Bad, Todd was a young, slim dude, and a lot of fans even gave him the nickname Meth Damon because he kind of looked like Matt Damon, if Matt Damon was in the methamphetamine racket. But in El Camino, Todd looks both heavier and older, and in fact, it took me a minute to realize that this was the same character, because the first time I saw him in El Camino, I was like, who's this Andy Richter-looking dude that's talking to Jesse? And it wasn't until they showed a full shot of him that I went, oh, that's Todd. Oh, okay. If you notice the difference, and you probably will, the discrepancy in how Todd looks is a bit distracting, especially if you watch this right after watching the end of Breaking Bad. But at the same time, it's not so distracting that you can't excuse it. And I'm actually going to give the movie credit for not trying to explain it away in a line of dialogue or something. Like, it would have been dumb if there was a scene where Todd was like, well, I'm glad I decided to gain 30 pounds, but I think I'm now going to lose that weight over the next few weeks. Like, that would have been stupid. It's okay that he looks older, even though this is supposed to be in the past. Because, hey, it's a movie. We can suspend our disbelief for a few minutes and pretend that he looks just like he did in Breaking Bad, even though he doesn't. Outside of Todd, everything in this movie comes off as plausible and fitting. I really appreciate that there is a moment in El Camino where Jesse hears on the radio that Heisenberg had died, and I love that because it's a confirmation that, yes, Walter White really did die at the end of Breaking Bad. I love that the film took a moment to dispel any crazy theories that, I don't know, he faked his own death and built his own Emperor Palpatine life support crane, and that he's actually doing fine, he's living underground and making better meth than he's ever made before. Like, no. He's dead, and here's a reminder. I love, too, that this movie is not in a hurry, and that it's not trying to outdo Breaking Bad or to match its heights by having a plot that's equally as epic. The tempo of El Camino is very relaxed. You really get to marinate in these scenes, which is perfect for someone like me who loves being able to dive back into this universe. I think my favorite scene in the whole movie, as odd as this may sound, is the scene near the end where Jesse is waiting patiently for these people to finish up their business before he confronts them. And you see him playing with a beetle as he's sitting there. And this scene is great to me because it's like a metaphor for the film. Jesse didn't need to be there in that moment. He had compelling business that he wanted to do with them, but he could have walked away and done something else if he wanted to. The stakes are no more pressing than that. But that's a good thing. The film, in this moment, essentially acknowledges its own limitations. It's like it was announcing, we know we can't be Breaking Bad right now, but we're not trying to be Breaking Bad either. We're just trying to tell this story. El Camino's scope is perfect. It knows what it is, and it knows what it isn't, And what it is a story where Jesse has 30 seconds to play with a beetle. Now, I personally really don't have any complaints with this movie. I found it totally satisfying, and I think I may have even liked it better the second time I saw it, which is rare for me. But it does have a 2-hour runtime, and I know that is going to be an issue for some people because the movie is pretty slow. It moves at a much slower rate than Breaking Bad, which was always going at this incredible breakneck speed, even from the first scene. Like, the beauty of Breaking Bad is that it's not one of those shows where you're like, well, it gets better in season 3. No. Breaking Bad is really interesting right off the bat. The pace in El Camino, though, is actually closer to what you'd find in Better Call Saul, which was the prequel series to Breaking Bad. And if you're a Breaking Bad fan who gave up on Better Call Saul because of how slow it was, then there is a chance that El Camino won't be fast enough for you. There's a chance you'll think that this movie drags at times. And the only other possible complaint I can think of is that El Camino isn't that accessible to people who didn't watch the show, which, duh. But if for some inexplicable reason you watch El Camino before watching Breaking Bad, you'll likely be very confused who some of these people are and why they seem to matter as much as they do. Aside from that, though, if you don't mind slow burns, and if you're a Breaking Bad superfan like moi, I think you'll really dig El Camino, because it is a worthy successor. It manages to tell a new story while not being so anchored in nostalgia that it's unwilling to try new things. Like, I like that this is slower. I like that it feels like a Western at times. So, I'm glad that El Camino was made. Especially because Robert Forster, who plays a very significant role in this movie, died on the same day that El Camino was released. So, this movie could not have been made if it had come out just 1 year later. It came out at the exact right time. And I think there's something to be said for that. Especially since it wasn't the first time the stars kind of aligned for this franchise.